On the one hand, I thought Dave made some good points. On the other, Douglas made some good points, and I really enjoyed the experience, which is probably what Joe Rogan thought. But no, we're in a very tribal world where before you guys even sat down together with Joe Rogan, they'd already decided you were going to be disintegrated, dismantled, and crucified. And similarly,
just like the Sam Cedar fans.
A lot of people who like you and don't like Douglas Murray felt exactly the same way about what was going to happen to him. What does that tell you about discourse today? And what do we do about that?
I will say that while I absolutely had faith that Dave would be able to handle himself, I am in no way was like, oh, Dave's going to crush this dude. I was very much going in excited to listen to both sides. So maybe not so much on Dave's side, but certainly the wokies on Douglas's side.
What does that tell you about discourse today? And what do we do about that, if anything?
Well, for the record, I will.
I mean, that's a good part. What do we do, if anything? I mean, nothing. We continue having conversations.
And I try to not live my life in on internet comments, but for this one, I just could not help myself. But if you look at the YouTube comments or the Spotify comments, I mean, it's overwhelmingly hostile toward Douglas. It seems to me that there's every account on Twitter with an Israeli flag and a Hebrew name in their bio certainly seem to think that I got my ass kicked. What's even more fascinating is that there'd be specific moments that people draw 180-degree opposite conclusions from. Like the one that I saw going super viral is him, asking me if I've ever been to Israel, and then
you haven't been there? You haven't been there?
Kind of putting on a performance about how shocked he is that I haven't been there. And it was interesting to me how different people could look at the exact same moment, and one group of people could say, oh, this was Dave getting destroyed. And the other group of people could say, I mean, like, objectively, this is a non-argument. This doesn't win you any points in a debate. Like, I obviously fall into the second group there, but it certainly does show you how dug in certain people are, of course, which I think is to be expected in this most of contentious issues. But yeah, I don't know exactly what to take from that, but much like in the last 5 years particularly, it does feel like people are living in different realities. And even if you were to ask people to tell the story of COVID, I mean, like, what just happened over the last 5 years with this global pandemic?
I think it goes back further than that. At least since the beginning of the Trump era. The bifurcated realities has been a real issue in the sense that just what he said, but we could look at the same thing. We could watch the same speech. We could see the same event. We can look at the same policy and somehow have completely opposite perspectives of what it is. And I think we're all guilty of that. I don't think that it's a matter of, oh, I have the right answer and you have the wrong answer all the time. Sometimes it definitely is. But yeah, I mean, it's been very difficult to have, centrist type ideals and want to want to find that middle ground because people aren't looking for it. People aren't looking for it. And guys, we do have the poll of who won the original JRE debate. Dave Smith, Douglas Murray, or I didn't watch it if you didn't watch it. But right now, Dave Smith is in the lead.
To tell the story of COVID. I mean, like, what just happened over the last 5 years with this global pandemic? It's amazing how much people could have completely diametrically opposed understandings of the reality we just lived through. Now, I'm not being a relativist here. I think one of those sides is wrong and the other one is right, but that is where we are.
Of course, you're going to pick a side.
Funny enough, I would say the COVID debate is a lot more nuanced in reality than the two extremities take it, for what it's worth. But let's bring in John Spencer, because he certainly was not in the Dave Smith one camp. You tweeted, Dave Smith and Douglas Murray debated who qualifies as an expert and who should be making declarative statements about certain wars. That question answers itself. And that's being...
Does it though?
And that's being construed, John, to mean that you believe that Dave Smith was not the expert in the room. Explain why you felt that Dave Smith lost this debate.
This is going to be interesting. Why did Dave... So one of the issues with Douglas Murray was that we got off topic. So this is the question. Why do you feel that Dave Smith lost the debate? Pretty simple. I think he lost because XYZ.
Sure. I wouldn't say it had anything to do with Douglas. I would have to say it was the statements that Dave Smith made during the podcast, which highlight, and I won't get into the credentialism as Dave's quoting four-star generals or who's an expert, who's not. I do research.
You will, though.
I think Dave tells jokes for a living. I had a problem with the statements he were.
So I'm not going to do credentialism, but here are my credentials and here are the lack of his.
Come on, man. I do research. I think Dave tells jokes for a living. I had a problem with the statements you were made. And then how do you come to that conclusion, which really does get to the podcaster world versus other individuals on how did you come to that opinion or that declarative statement, like Israel is intentionally killing civilians. I mean, there's like 10 different ways you can do research. You can do comparative, case study. And I think this is what Douglas was saying. If you haven't been there, then how are you getting to your conclusion? You ethnographic, you can go there and do interviews in Gaza, like both Douglas and I have done with soldiers. What's going on? How are you doing it? You can do even historical archival data research. That's not what it appears that Dave does. And it seems to be more of a historical revisionism. Take a piece of data that you got and then tell a really convincing narrative on how you got to your conclusion. But as somebody who has students, I mean, correlation is not causation is that famous phrase. When that story is actually just a lot of correlation and inferences, how did you get to your conclusion? How do you do that research? Forget the expertise and the credentialism. You're making a statement like it's true. And I know Dave's anti-war, and that's great.
Well, no, he's making a claim as if it's his opinion, which is a valid opinion. Now, if you can say why his opinion is not valid, well, then we're getting somewhere, but yet to do that. Yeah, you haven't been there. You haven't been there. You haven't been there.
Expertise and the credentialism. You're making a statement like it's true. And I know Dave's anti-war, and that's great, but you can't be anti-factual. And Dave, without Douglas, just made a bunch of not true statements.
Such as?
Give some of the key examples of what you think were
care to share one?
Yeah, right?
Inaccurate.
And so again, we're down this road of I have these things that you said that were wrong, and therefore you are wrong. Okay.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think the over one, which is what me and Dave were talking over X, is that Israel is intentionally killing civilians, especially children. That's not a factual statement at all, because it doesn't even include the base information. So it's almost like, you just don't know the information you need to know to make that judgment. And, let's forget comparing it to a.
You just don't get it. But maybe if you open up your heart one day, you will understand. I subconsciously, I was looking at him and something is off. His teeth are a weird shape, right? That is odd.
You just don't know the information you need to know to make that judgment. And, let's forget comparing it to a domestic situation like Dave continues to do on Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, others. Like if somebody killed my kids and I know where he's at and I go to that apartment building and I kill everybody in it, that's murder. And that's what Israel is doing. And that's not true. Even you, Piers, have commented about Israel striking something and saying, look at the number of civilians. That's not acceptable. That's not how war works. It's not even how you would assess that situation, because it completely rules out what the law of war says about proportionality, about assessing what is the target, who is that individual, what's his value, concrete value. And then, which a lot of people leave out, is what precautions did Israel take, like we just saw recently, of calling everybody in the building saying, look, the terrorist is using this building for a military purpose.
So what is it that Dave got wrong?
You must leave. You must get out of this area, or all the other steps, these civilian harm mitigation measures. So that one's a really huge one, but there are other ones, like when Dave said that there are more children that have died in this war than any modern war. That's just, of course, Douglas called that out, but there is a whole list of them, from the blockade, from the occupation, like all of these things were just counterfactual and not a logic that leads to a conclusion, but he's really convincing. And that's what I have a problem with.
Just lay down.
All right, Dave, your response.
So basically nothing. He got a number wrong. That was corrected in the debate. Therefore, you lose.